raise some cane. You gotta raise some cane. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some cane, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change. Time is now. We gotta raise some cane.
Welcome to the Raising Cane Show. Join us as we sit down with Steven Schetrom, a true West Virginia native who's making waves in both local government and the financial world. Born and raised in Hardy County, Steven has deep roots in his community and a passion for helping others succeed. From his early days at Moorefield High School to earning his MBA and founding his own investment advisory firm, Steven's journey is one of dedication, leadership, and vision. Now serving as a county commissioner, he's working to make Hardy County a better place for everyone. Don't miss this insightful conversation about his life, career, and the values that guide him. Welcome, Steven. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Nate. It's great to be on your show. And one thing that becomes clear to me after seeing you on the show is your background and just the whole look of your studio there. I think I need to upgrade my my background for sure, because that looks really good. But you've done a great job, and that looks really great.
That was some of my wife's help with the decorating there, but
yeah,
I'll tell you, one of the things about the show that I like, doing this local show on West Virginia in particular, is there's a lot of people that really have no idea what a county commissioner even does. They don't know what our sheriff does. They don't know what our state legislature, our delegates, and our senators do. And so I've been bringing some people on the show from different government officials within, state government and local government. And you're the first county commissioner, that I've had on, and I hope to have many more. One of the things that I learned while I was campaigning was just how much, the county commissioners are connected to their communities. When I wanted to know what was really going on in that county, I talked to the county commissioners. The delegates and the senators, they're kind of away and they're down there in, Charleston. And while they're down in Charleston, they really don't know what's going on, back home. But the county commissioners are always there. And so I'm really glad to have you on. And I guess that's probably a good place to start is, I want to ask you, what inspired you to pursue a role as a county commissioner? And how has your background in finance and entrepreneurship influenced your approach to governing Hardy County?
That's a great question. I was always inspired, probably from the time in undergrad, in college. So in undergrad, I studied secondary education, social studies, and I was extremely interested in the political process, in the Constitution, in our nation's history, how policy makes a difference, how political parties work. I was extremely interested in that, not only as part of my coursework, but just continuously reading outside of that, following the latest in terms of what was going on. This was especially at the national level, though, at that point. That's where my first interest became clear. And so, but at the same time, that was many, many years ago. I graduated undergrad in 2003. So that was quite some years ago. And in the meantime, I needed to establish my career. I was raising a family, so you're doing things that are just life, which I do think is very important. Not that it would have been wrong for me to formally enter politics at that time, but I do value living life and learning, and I think it informs your perspective in working as a county commissioner. And when I became interested in actually running and identifying a race and running for county commissioner was really because of my children. I have two sons. My oldest is a second year student now in college, and my youngest is an 11th grader. And my two children, my two sons, is what inspired me specifically, concretely, to run for political office in my county. County commissioners, as you have said, there's no end to the amount of work that a county commissioner does. And there's a wide range within that, because you answer to the voters ultimately, but county commissioners need to be very, very, very aware of what is happening in their county. The first duty of the county commission is to set the budget and to fund other constitutional offices like prosecuting attorney, assessor, sheriff, county clerk, circuit clerk. Those offices, they have to be funded, and the county commission sets the budget for those offices, and that's your primary duty. But among that, just for instance, there is emergency services within the county, like emergency medical services. And the West Virginia law gives responsibility for counties to provide that within their county. And that's a huge deal right now. As expenses have gone up over the last about 3.5 years, tremendously. Puts great pressure on counties to fund those emergency medical EMS services in the county. That's a key concern of county commissioners across our state and really across our country.
That's something that I've heard come up actually in many different counties. Jefferson County, up in the South Mountain region. They had an issue where they basically lost their ambulance service, and the problem is it's so rural, and at the mountain there's no hospital nearby. There's a lot of people concerned because if you have a heart attack, it takes 45 minutes for somebody to be able to respond. That 45 minutes could mean the difference between life and death.
100%.
So I know that that's an area where there's been a lot of cuts all over the state. When you think about like kind of your key responsibilities and the challenges that a county commissioner faces, what would you, if you were to name like the top three responsibilities? You mentioned one of them, the budget, and then what would be some other key responsibilities, and the reason I'm asking is because, to be honest with you, until I decided to run, I had no idea what a county commissioner did until I decided to run for Congress, and then I started learning about as I started meeting people like you and others who were running for public office, I started learning about what all these other government offices do, and so I think it's important for the American people, and I think for people in West Virginia to understand what their county commissioners do and what their responsibilities are, and also what challenges that you face, and what are the things that are that you guys struggle with, to deal with.
So another key area of concern, a challenge, but also an opportunity for any county commissioner is going to be growth within your county. If there's not growth, it's going to be very hard for that county to be successful. So you have to foster an environment for growth to happen, meaning be business friendly. That means providing services often, but a low tax base that also attracts businesses. That's a challenging proposition. West Virginia right now is working to attract businesses. There's some controversy on that. Like, just for instance, we received a report. This was a broadband report, but we had our Secretary of Commerce gave a report to us, to all county commissioners gathered, and this was last week, gathered at a state auditor's budget training conference. And Hardy County was listed on there because we had a what I think will ultimately be a great company come into the county, provide 100 jobs, about a $48 million investment. And they took an empty factory building, and now they're repurposing that. It's a German company, Mettler. Papier Mettler is the name of the company, and so they produce like the bags that you get in CVS or another store. They produce those bags. That's a huge win for Hardy County. That's a great investment. But ensuring growth in the county, and here's where this is very important, and that has to do with planning. So Hardy County has a planning commission. We have planning and zoning. There are only a handful of counties in the entire state that have planning and zoning. Hardy County is one of those counties. It's very, very important because unless you have a county working for years on its own future, if you don't know where you're going, I don't know if you go anywhere sometimes. You just spin circles. And so that issue having to do with growth within the county and having to do with good growth, because just for instance, you mentioned Jefferson County, and I love Jefferson County. It's a beautiful county. There are wonderful people there. I've been there for meetings, wonderful county. Here's an issue that impacts Jefferson County, though. They have a lot of residential growth. But residential growth won't pay for services.
Right.
Manufacturing growth will, just because there's more bang for the buck coming from that plant or factory or whatever it is. You can pay for services with that type of investment. With only residential growth, it's very, very difficult to pay for services with that type of growth. And so that's where planning comes in.
That's a very important subject matter. And I actually, when I was down campaigning, knocking on doors in Jefferson County, there was a new development, and we went into there, and I mean, they built all these beautiful homes, but they didn't have enough water. And so they were actually water rationing, in this brand new, can you imagine buying a brand new home?
Wow.
and not having enough water? It's crazy, but that's because somebody obviously did not, plan properly. And so planning and, does play a major role, especially because something's going to have to pay for upgrading things like, water treatment plants or, sewage and all of those utilities, right?
Yes, 100%. That's a great point. And that issue alone, it's both an opportunity because, I'm speaking about county commissioners in general, but specifically about Hardy County. Hardy County is very well situated for growth geographically. We're in the Eastern Panhandle. There's growth that comes just from where we're located. But there's a challenge in addressing this planning issue. One important thing for any county commission, the county commission is a political subdivision of the state. You have as much authority as the state grants you, and you don't have any more authority than that. And if the state giveth, the state taketh away, and they can do that. And that has been an issue because West Virginia right now is an all of the above energy state. Mm-hmm. That presents challenges within counties because, there are pretty large alternative energy projects proposed in the state. In my county in particular, in Hardy County, there's one significantly large one planned, or at least proposed, and then there's an additional, not so large, but it's still impactful.
I'm assuming you're talking about the Short Mountain.
That's one of them. That's a windmill project. We also have a solar project proposed. They have 3,000 acres leased. They say the plan is for it to cover about 1,500 of those acres. But it's an issue because, just for instance, those projects aren't um, aren't being proposed by a government regulated utility. Okay, something like Potomac Edison. They're not
Mhm.
being proposed by them. They're by a merchant, a merchant company. None of that electricity that's produced there will be used by what people in West Virginia. It will enter the
Wow.
grid and it will go out of West Virginia. And so you have an issue where, so we're talking about planning. This is a very key issue in West Virginia. It has to
Mhm.
do with authority over the land in West Virginia. And here's what happens. A county can oppose that type of project, but there are, and we've spent massive amounts of time over the past couple of years dealing with these issues in our legislature because alternative energy companies pay lobbyists a lot of money to lobby state legislative bodies. And
Mhm.
so what you'll have is that you have bills proposed that will override any county planning that would enable the county to control its own land, basically. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
And it's not the county's land. I understand it's personal property, and we can get into that as well. But
Well, I wanna bring something up because I
sure,
sat in on a couple of meetings, where people were opposed to or concerned about the Short Mountain
yeah,
windmill project, and I listened to these folks. And to be honest with you, I thought at first I was going to be listening to a bunch of people just griping because they don't want change. But the truth is when I listened to what their complaints were and what they were contentious about, they have every right to be. We're talking
yes,
about them wanting to put in these windmills. I think it was like
yes,
within 300 feet of
yes,
residential property, and
yes,
these things are 400 feet tall, and
yeah,
they would require a zoning change, which is a county issue, and
yes,
would require changing residential. But just from a practical standpoint, imagine you buy a house with a beautiful mountain view, and next thing you know, they want to stick a windmill,
yeah,
next to your property. Without a doubt, that's going to have an impact on the value of that home. Not to mention, you know, the beauty and the the sound and everything else that goes with being next to one of these things. So I totally understand that, but you're right. Why are they even considering that when we have enough coal to last 1,000 years in the state? Because there are lobbyists who are pushing this kind of stuff, and there's all this money coming from the feds and these grants and things like that that go to these merchant companies. And you're right. You bring up a very, very good point, which is why would West Virginia want to invest in, a power generation that doesn't somehow benefit the people? Because
yes,
ultimately, these people who we elected to go down there to Charleston to represent us, they're supposed to be representing us.
yes,
And the fact is that, uh, you know, I'd like to see my electric bill come down. I pay
yes,
a highly exorbitant electric fee, electric bill. I'd like to see, and we could do that if we could produce more of our electricity here that does go to people in West Virginia, that would reduce our overall bills. But you're
yeah.
right, when they send it out of the state, that's not necessarily helping anybody, except for
No,
those
it's
that are the owners of those companies.
yeah, yeah, 100%, absolutely. And so you have, on this 1,500 proposed solar project, you have the electricity from that going to Loudoun County data centers. I mean, that's what, that'd be one place that it would go.
Yeah.
So not that we have anything against Loudoun County,
No,
but
but it'd be
you're
nice to build one of those data centers here in West Virginia.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And have, the land that is being used to place these, um, place these energy sources on that would actually be used to lower the cost for West Virginia residents. Like
Right.
it just doesn't make any sense from a resident of West Virginia's point of view. It doesn't make any sense some of what is being proposed. Like and you have to ask questions, and that's a huge part of what a county commissioner does is try to ask tough questions because just for instance, a county commissioner is probably not an expert in alternative energy, just most likely the case that you're not an expert there. And so one thing you need to do is know the right questions to ask, like when companies come. And often, so these projects won't be paid for in terms of county revenues. It won't be through taxes. They'll propose pilot agreements. That's what ultimately happen with these projects. And when you start looking at the individual pilot agreements, that's payment in lieu of taxes. When you start looking at them, they're all over the map. Like when you look at, for instance, there's one that I've read from Raleigh County. There's another one from Berkeley County. Those are two very different deals those two counties received. So someone got a better deal than another. That's what becomes clear. And so you worry about that, because what you start worrying about is everything you're being presented as a county commissioner coming from the company. You just worry that whether or not
Right.
you're getting the right information. And
They're
it
going
makes you
to,
skeptical.
yeah, there's no adversarial, look into anything they're proposing. It's all
Yes.
it's all wonderful, fairy dust and unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah.
The one thing that has, I was surprised on, I'm going back to this issue with the windmills, and I had no
Yes.
idea about this, but these windmills they're not designed to last forever. And
Absolutely.
so, they basically have a lifespan of about 20 to 25 years or so.
Yes.
And so I had spoken to somebody who was involved in energy in Texas, and had a lot of knowledge in this area. And one of the things they mentioned was how important it is to and I can't remember if I got the term right, but I think it was making sure that the bonding was covering the dismantling and removal of this thing once its lifespan is completed. And that
Yes.
oftentimes, county will agree to something and there isn't. And so what ends up happening is you end up with something that doesn't work, is, ugly and broke down at the end of it. And now the counties, and quite honestly, the taxpayers, are left with the bill of dismantling and removing it.
Oh, no, that's a great point. Decommissioning. It's a huge deal. When you start talking about any project, and the county has to account for the decommissioning of that project. And if they don't require the company to purchase bond insurance to pay for that, which there are times when this is not done. It's not considered, and it's not done. And someone, as you mentioned, taxpayers that's who will be on the hook for this. So it's a huge issue, the decommissioning of these projects.
Yeah. So you have your own company, Legacy
Yes.
Financial LLC. It's been a significant part, I'm sure, of your professional journey. And I'm curious though, like for a county commissioner, and obviously it's not a full-time gig, but still, how do you balance running a successful investment advisory firm with your duties as a county commissioner? And what advice would you give to others that are looking to juggle multiple roles effectively?
No, that is a great question, because talking about life balance, and that's a huge deal. You have to, first of all, you have to have your own priorities straight. And I would make sure that if I was someone considering it, I would make sure that you have that you're pretty stable before you enter this. So that's the first part. Secondly, you have to continue to work on your discipline. It's not just going to come. You have to make sure through your own decisions that it works out. Like, you have to make that be. So your self-discipline is very important. So number one thing is that your priorities are in line before you even do something like this. And then secondly, even after you do it, because basically, when you're doing something like this, it isn't whether or not you have enough work. It's the priorities every day that you set, because the mountain of work that you have in front of you, there's no end to that. So you have to set priorities. You have to also be willing to live. You have to not be a person who has to feel that they get the job done today. You get a certain amount of the job done, but there are always things hanging out there that you have to complete the day after, and even the month after, because some of these projects hang out for quite some time, years at times. And so I think those two things are very important, the priorities, and then the ability to be a self-starter, that, you don't need someone to be keeping you accountable, although we all need accountability, but that you're a self-starter who will create your own accountability system to stay on track. And you know, I think that's the process we're all in. It's very important for
Mhm.
your own personal growth, but those two things are very important. The priorities, and then secondly, the ability to grow in disciplining yourself and making sure you're keeping a work-life balance, and giving enough attention to your company, because it won't succeed if you don't give attention to it either, but
That's right.
also being accountable to the people who voted for you. And it's a challenge that you have to be willing to take on. And I like it. I like it personally. I think that, maybe everyone would. I think some people would. You need to grapple with that, whether you really want to do it or not, because most certainly it's not for everyone, and not everyone would be ready to do that, to commit to that. But I think those two things will get you a long way toward being ready.
So in light of that, what you just brought up about, basically that, you're basically, you got to stay engaged in communicating with, with the community. How do you ensure that their voices are heard, and that their needs are being met in your decision making process? So how do you engage with them?
Yeah, that is a great question, and there are things that I think that I need to do in order to keep increasing that. Well, first of all, a county commissioner, you to be engaged, you have to go to community events. For
Mhm.
instance, just to give you kind of a wide range of events. I mean, church life and being engaged in church life, that gets you in the community, and there's a dialogue that comes from any community organization. Church is one example, but any community organization, and being involved in those community organizations, even if you're not a member. Like, for instance, I'm not a member of the Moorefield Lions Club, but sometimes they do barbecue chicken, and that's one of their fundraisers. It's kind of like it's a tradition in Hardy County. The Lions Club is going to be doing on a Saturday morning barbecue chicken in our town park in
Hey, how can you
Moorefield.
pass that up?
Yeah, how can you pass that up? It's like, that's why they keep it going. It's a great
That's right.
fundraiser, and they have their system. They have everything, all the stuff. But they ask you to come and help, and that's a way to go out to the community. So that's one way. It's personal interaction. I
Hmm.
think that, and many people are stuck there. They're kind of in a different generation, and that's how they engage. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing at all wrong with that. I think you, though, need to. People are getting all sorts of information these days. Okay, so, and you cannot engage with everyone personally. That's not possible.
Sure.
You can do things like you are doing right now with this podcast. Like, it's a way to engage with a much larger audience, and it's extremely good. And like, for a county commissioner, I have Facebook, and I try to do things like that, and try to stay engaged with social media, because I think that's extremely helpful
Hmm.
as well. I mean, most certainly you have to learn to live in that world, and you have to realize. I mean, it's kind of a hard thing. It's definitely a hard thing to say, that every idea that's put out there on social media, probably don't take it and run with it as official policy. Probably don't do that. But at the same time, you have to know what people are saying, and they
Hmm.
have a perspective, and you always need to know. I mean, that's a legitimate, that's a perspective, and you need to know that person who you're representing has that perspective. So I think you want to be doing that, and I think also it's very helpful to be a person who's very committed to staying engaged in um, the news, like with what's happening in your state, certainly in your county, but also in your state. And that's what I try to do. That's how I try to stay. An additional thing, and you can cut me off, if we want to go a little deeper here, but An additional thing is you have to be learning. Like, so one thing that I do, like our state association meetings, I try to attend those faithfully. Also, there are national association of counties meetings, and I try to go out there because often it helps a whole lot if you know what's going on in other areas and maybe how they've dealt
Mm,
with it. Because
that's a good point.
all these issues are very hard often. They're not what counties often deal with is there are needs, but there aren't funding sources to meet
Right.
the needs.
Right.
Okay. Because so counties in West Virginia can't take on debt. That's a really, really big deal because they can't put future commissions under an obligation to pay off that debt. It's kind of understandable if you think about it.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good thing.
I do too.
But I can imagine that it does limit, what what a county can do. You basically have to make choices. You're gonna have to
Yes.
cut certain things if you want new things, and
Yes.
or bring in, like you mentioned, grow, your tax base.
Yes.
So we're I've got to take a break here and to give a word to our sponsors, but we will be right back. So please, folks, stay tuned, and we will be right back. Also, one thing that I want to mention is, if you're, make sure that you like and subscribe to the show. You guys can follow me on my social media at Nate Cain for WV. That's NATECAIN, the number 4 WV. I'm pretty much on all social media: X, Facebook, Gab, Getter, True Social, you name it, Instagram. But I'm also, we just got our website up now. And so all of these shows, we are posting them up on our website. It is theraisingcaneshow.com. So we'll be right back after a very quick commercial here.
Born in the coastal plains of South Texas, Smoking Gun Coffee is founded by combat veterans that know exactly what a cup of coffee needs to taste like. Run by father and son, each coffee bean is perfected, roasted at 500 degrees, and cooled with a Gulf Coast breeze. Smoking Gun Coffee hand makes and bags each ounce of coffee for maximum customer satisfaction. With every purchase, 10% goes back to organizations that help veterans and local communities. That's Texas made, one bag at a time. To find out more, go to www.smokingguncoffee.com.
And we're back. This is the Raising Cain Show. I'm Nate Cain, your host, and I've been talking to Hardee County Commissioner Steven Schetrom. And, folks, I realize that, a lot of times, we may not even realize what goes into running a county, or what kinds of things that a county commissioner does. That may be interesting to some. It may not be interesting to others. But the fact is that we all need to understand this role. We need to understand, what is going on. And, I heard the statement made by, General Flynn about local action, can have, an effect on the nationally, and I really do think that. I think it's important that we start first at home, right, in our own households, making sure that we're taking care of our families. And the next step is taking care of our communities, making sure that we're, stepping up and, showing civic duty. And civic duty goes way beyond just voting. And so, Steve, I want to thank you for your service to your community. And I think it's a really important thing. Given your deep roots in Hardee County, and the fact that Hardee County is a rural county, part of the Potomac Highlands, what are the unique challenges and opportunities that come with serving in a rural community, in local government versus, like if you were in, say, metropolitan area or something like that?
Great question. Great point. So just going back to services, just for instance, EMS services, it is very hard in a super rural community, which that's Hardee County is super rural. It's very hard to make something like EMS services work because financially viable, because people, it's so sparsely populated. People are spread out, residences are spread out. And so it's hard to serve a rural area. We've been successful in Hardy County. We impose a fee. Hardy County imposes a fee in order to do that. That was before I became commissioner. This was imposed some years ago, but we outside of that fee, we would not be able to serve Hardy County. It could be possible on one side of the county where you have, a bigger population, but it wouldn't be possible in the entire county, which the law requires that we serve the county and as much as possible. So that's a key challenge. Another, it's an opportunity while also a challenge. So Hardy County is in the Eastern Panhandle. So you have the extreme, the true Eastern Panhandle, Jefferson, Berkeley, Morgan out here. It's where the kind of, you're looking at West Virginia. It's right out here on the edge. You come in just a little bit and Hardy County is a little west of those counties.
Yeah, you guys are like in the hinge.
In the hinge, maybe is what we should say. Well, so what happens in Hardy County? It's a beautiful county.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I got to tell you, folks, if you've never been to Hardy County, West Virginia, you have to drive through it. It is one of the most scenic parts of the state. It's beautiful rolling hills, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And there's a lot to see there. But sorry, continue.
Oh yeah, no, thank you for pointing that out. It is true. It's just beautiful. You have river valleys and mountains. Nature abounds. It's just a beautiful county. But because of that, and because of our proximity to Northern Virginia, DC, we have a lot of people who also, understandably, love this beautiful county, and so they purchased second homes here, which what it creates often, and what we saw be created when there was a lot of excess federal money put into the system, is you had that on steroids. So people bought second homes out here. What happens, though, and what creates a challenge, is that people who live and work in the county don't get paid enough to afford the increase in housing costs that creates.
It drives up the price of real estate, right?
Yeah, and it's just it's a situation that happens in a county like ours, and so
and you're right. That is a unique. I would say that's a unique feature of being close to Northern Virginia. We experienced that here in Martinsburg area.
Sure.
Well, when I was looking for a home, I was looking for a home on the higher level because we had moved from Maryland. But still, I mean, it's like the difference in price of homes out here versus, say, Elkins, for example, or or some of the other counties that are more inland to the state, is significantly different. And so it's really difficult for young people, especially, I think, that are just starting out and in life, to get into the housing market. And I'm sure as a financial planning person, that you recognize the importance of owning a home. That's one of the best investments that you can possibly make, because you're going to live somewhere. You might as well build some equity while you're doing it instead of letting somebody else build it off of your rent payments.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. And the people who have owned assets over these past 3.5 years have done well. It's people who are earning a paycheck, and it's seniors. Those people have been the ones who have been hurt very badly over, in terms of the economic situation and the policies that we've experienced over the past 3.5 years. Those people have been hurt. Okay, so that creates a challenge. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what about because your county is involved in agriculture as well.
Yes.
I imagine it's a little bit of a learning curve versus, if you were in a city, county that was primarily metropolitan, you have to know both sides, right? You got to know about your standard industrial base. You got to know about your businesses, your retail businesses.
Yes.
You also need to know, though, about agriculture and the decisions that you make, having to deal with the farms and the ranchers and all of that. So you're really juggling a very large assortment of industries and, I guess, areas of the economy.
No, great point that is a great point. So Hardy County is the largest agricultural producer in the state. We produce about 25% of our state's agricultural production comes out of Hardy County.
Wow.
We're in the top 20% of agricultural producers in the nation. There's no joke in terms of agriculture, in terms of Hardy County. But yeah, you're right. It does because these. And one thing you mentioned young people, and that's a key challenge for a county like Hardy County, because our young people are graduating high school and often they're leaving and often they're not coming back. So it creates a real challenge because you need those young people coming back. Any community needs those young people moving into it, because like your boards, like your planning commission, like your rural development authority board, like the many boards that are involved in a community, you need talented young people to fill positions, because oftentimes in a community like Hardy County, I mean, you want the age and you want the experience, but many times those people are aging out and they're wanting to retire from boards. And if you're not having young people move back into that community, it's not good. That is not a good thing at all. And that's a key West Virginia challenge, is our biggest exporter being our young people. That you cannot have that be the case. And so
I think we were the only state, right, that had a lost seats in the in the last census, because our population has decreased, and that is definitely it's a real big problem, because I'm fortunate enough, I work in technology, but I'm fortunate enough to be able to work remotely. If I could not work remotely, I don't know that I could live in West Virginia, or I would have to live on the outskirts, like in Jefferson County, or maybe on the outskirts of Hardy County. I am willing to travel, because I absolutely despise living in the city, but that is a challenge, and I think it's a real problem, because people don't see a lot of opportunity in terms of like high paying jobs. And on that note, we've seen some challenges just not too long ago. You had a 10 mill, one of the last 3 10 mills in America, which is up in Hancock County, which shut down. And then you had, and that was about 1,000 jobs lost. And then you had Allegheny Wood Products, which, I think, impacted your community significantly. Can you talk about that challenge? And maybe, I'm sure there's other ones that I'm not even aware of. There used to be good coal mining jobs not too far from you, and they shut down I can't remember the name of it, but there was a coal mine up there, I think between you guys and Randolph County, but these are things that I think have a huge impact in terms of being able to make your area attractive. You got to have jobs, you got to have good paying jobs, so that people who are young will want to raise families and want to have kids. So tell me a little bit about that, some of the challenges that you guys have faced in terms of businesses that have gone under, but also if there are, any positive things that are coming out of, Hardy County, and things that you guys are working on. I'd like to hear about it.
Oh, sure, sure. And I think there are positives. We received some very good rankings in terms of Hardy County being a great place to start a company, to start a business. And that's a huge deal, just the exposure. And, I don't doubt that that's true, but just from the exposure, from those news reports going out, and we shared that, because we want people to know that. And going into that question that you asked about the opportunities, versus the challenges, I'll point out one little piece of anecdotal evidence on the housing costs. So my oldest son had gone to Governor's Honors Academy. That's held during the summer, and this was a couple years back, and it was at Fairmont State University at the time. And so at the end of that academy, they'll bring the parents in, have a nice dinner, and do some presentations. And we were there speaking to a couple from Morgantown, very, very nice couple. And I mean, I'm sure that we had the same assumption that they did. And we were talking to them about housing, and we could tell that they thought, without question, the home prices in Morgantown, that's our land grant university right there. And so they get a lot of growth, that other areas of the state might not get. But we could tell, and we sort of, my wife and I had the same assumption that home prices there would be higher than, of course, where we live in super rural Hardy County. Turns out we come back and look, and our zip code is for Baker, Baker. That's, we live in Baker. That's kind of center of the county in Hardy County. Turns out that the average home price for Baker was higher than Morgantown. And that's just a little piece
that shocks me.
It's shocking. You can't
But
believe that.
That probably speaks to what you were talking about with, people from Northern Virginia buying up homes,
Yes.
second homes, because, they make a lot of money down there.
Yeah,
and
they do.
But that doesn't necessarily help, people who are, living in West Virginia, specifically the, retirees and others. That's a difficult thing. I imagine that would be hard to balance.
It is. And that's what
there's not a lot you can do about it, right?
It's a huge deal. It's a huge challenge, and you have to keep working. I mean, I think one thing is to be active and trying to, there's been some success in West Virginia at recruiting companies to come in. And I think that is viable. I mean, there are some, specifically to Hardy County, there's some key positives, like, we have a community college that's right within the county. Okay, that's a huge deal because there's training, and community colleges can often be more flexible in terms of what they're offering. Like, right now, trades. Right now, trades are very needed in West Virginia. Plumbing, electrician.
They're needed all over the country.
Country. And a community college often can create programs for training for those people. And so we have a community college. We also have broadband. There was a grant in 2012. Our local Hardy Telecommunications, our local telecommunications company, received grant funding from that grant, and they built fiber out in the entire county.
That's
a
important.
Huge deal.
That is huge for businesses, especially in this, modern day of e-commerce. You've got to have internet if you have a business. If you don't, it's going to kill you. And not just that, but, like where I live, when I bought this expensive house in a beautiful part of Berkeley County, I didn't think to ask, do you guys have internet? Because I just assumed, because of the price of the house, that it would have internet.
Sure.
Turns out there was no internet out here.
Wow,
and not even 4G LTE. I couldn't even get really good signal here. So 4G LTE was kind of out of the question too. And there was really no option. So thank God for Elon Musk and, for,
right.
for Starlink, because that really saved me, because otherwise I'd be driving down to work every day. But that has made it possible here. And I'm hopeful that if there was any place at all that I think Elon Musk should do a pilot project of pushing Starlink, it should be here in West Virginia, because
right.
running fiber, across the mountainous terrain, it's expensive, and
very
it's
expensive.
Difficult. So,
and West Virginia did do very well in receiving broadband funding. They did, I think a total of $42 billion coming from the federal government through the BEAD program. West Virginia received, I believe, $3 billion of that. So West Virginia did very well in that. Like we kind of punched above our weight there. That's a great thing for the rest of the state. But that's a opportunity, you know, for Hardy County, and we most certainly, our telecommunications company tells us that every person who's looking for a home here, they call them to ask about internet service. And so
Yeah.
we all know how important it is, but that's that's a strength. That's an opportunity. If you did a SWOT analysis for Hardy County, that would be there on the strength side.
So I want to shift the conversation just a little bit.
Okay.
You know, West Virginia is facing increased threats from wildfires, and yet the state seems underprepared to protect people and property. As a county commissioner, how are you addressing this growing concern in Hardy County? You guys had some pretty bad wildfires not too long ago. What was those impacts, you know, for you guys, and you know, what are you guys doing to better prepare for those types of natural disasters?
Yeah, it was very impactful. We spent a number of days being on edge and paying attention to every report that would come in. We spent time at our 911 office watching our dispatchers. So where West Virginia did very well is the communication among counties throughout the state. We had crews come from Preston County, and counties all over the state sent people here to help with the wildfires in Hardy County. We had hotshot crews come from California, and these guys are professional.
I met some of those guys, actually.
You did?
And
Yeah.
I was in Elkins, and we stopped at a restaurant, and there were hotshot guys that were eating at a restaurant there, and they had just come from Hardy County. So
okay, yeah. So you know, that part we did very well in. We communicated, I believe, fairly well with our governor. There was a little question and remains a little question in my mind about the speed at which the National Guard was sent. But I do think everything was done that created a situation that was responded to as quickly as was possible. I do think that happened because they sent National Guard helicopters out, and they put water on the fire, which that helped slow things down. Where I saw the need for improvement, and we've done several debriefings, and we still have some debriefings scheduled to continue to work on this, because a challenge for us was with communication, and that has to do with having command centers set up. It has to do with a fireman out here being able to, in all places, because you know we have pretty deep hollows in West Virginia, and you can have a fireman taking a radio down there and to fight a fire, and then not being able to communicate back. That's a scary. That's a scary thought, but it did happen during these fires. Like, we sat down with all our local firefighters who did a tremendous job. Like, we don't want to be negative at all about the situation, because you had people who went, it was hard to.
Well, it's what you're talking about, you know, the ability to be able to, you know, get communications down into some of these hollers. And for those that are not, you know, from West Virginia, a holler is a valley. But
right.
But I was in Romney, and at a meeting there, and they were talking about ham radio and how important ham radio became during blizzards. They had a major blizzard that, you know, wiped out communications, and it was because of ham radio they were able to communicate to emergency services. So things like that are things that probably most people wouldn't even realize. But it is important. We're coming, you know, getting close to the end of the hour here, and I got a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you before we close up here. But one of them that I have for you is what role do you think that local governments should play in educating residents about do you feel like there's more that local government can do to I guess let residents know what services are available, or do you feel like there's something do you feel like it's just like it seems to me like there's a general apathy towards government in general, right?
Completely.
We had 18%, voter turnout in the primary.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
most people don't go to the polls to vote for their local people. They don't even know who their local people is. They go there because of the president or because of, maybe a senator or a governor. But then the down ballot positions, most people don't know anything about them. And part of it, it's a weird problem, because the lower level positions on the ballot, they don't have the money to do all the advertising that the big players do in these races. But in some ways, your county commissioner may have more impact on you than your governor does, or than your president does. And so it's so important to know who these people are. We're finding out, after COVID, of course, how important school boards are to knowing that our children are not being, pushed, ideologies of transgenderism and the LGBTQ agenda and all that. It's so important to know who you're electing at the local level. And so what do you think could be done to, I guess, create greater awareness or maybe incentive, for people to get to know who their local officials are?
Well, I think one thing that we've done, we are invited at times to come out into the schools. This is it might seem like a very small thing, but it's something we've done and we've seen some success in it. You can work with the school. You can begin to build relationships with teachers in the school. Often they will allow me to go out there and present, to present what I do as a county commissioner daily. They allow that. That's some engagement. It's engagement for young people. We do have a dedicated person to public relations, and that person is all about getting, in Hardy County, we have that. Every county won't have that. What we saw is we have a great need for people to be made aware of what's going on in the county and to try to be as transparent as possible. We also signed up, our state auditor's office created this transparency website where you're trying to allow people to know what money is spent on in the county. And so we try to do all those things, anything that has to do with transparency, and it's a tool that we can use. We try to do them in order to engage the people of our county. I think that anything you could do, and I do think you're completely right that most likely if your county commissioner is a serious county commissioner and they are working, it will have more of an impact on your life than the governor will, because here's what's a key thing, and it's a key job of a county commissioner who's an effective county commissioner, and that's to reach above and beyond. Meaning, I have to punch toward the state level. I have to make our legislators and people who are involved in state government aware of the people of Hardy County's needs and the different issues that are impacting people of Hardy County. And you have to go above and beyond just a job description to do that. You have to build the relationships, and you have to make sure, because I'm a representative for the 14,000 people who are in Hardy County. I'm representing them, and I have to be building relationships at the state level and making those concerns heard. And that's extremely important. But I do think that there is an apathy. I absolutely think that. I think that the concern with that apathy is that you don't see an increase of democracy and freedom if you have an apathetic electorate. You don't. Right. It's a huge deal. Like, as we go down this path, and we see very clear choices before us between more of a trend toward certainly socialism, and some of them are even beyond socialism, if we're honest.
You see people marching with the communist flag, which is
some
ridiculous.
Things that have been put forward in terms of economic policy. It's insane. It certainly is not going to, even some of the new things that have been put forward, like providing $25,000 for first-time homebuyers. These aren't solutions to problems. It just exacerbates the problem.
Well,
And
that's what leads to the inflation that we're seeing across the country is all this
absolutely,
government spending. There's
absolutely.
an interesting study I remember in economic. Look, in all fair disclosure, economics was my worst class in college, so not my forte. But the one thing that I took away from my economics course that I remember was that there had been a direct the direct result of the government, for example, um, providing loans for college and providing grants for college and backing, student loans, um, was basically inflation at the highest levels. So you had like a
Right,
300% inflation, for getting a college, degree over the last 30 years. And it's
yeah,
because the government is paying and they're guaranteeing these loans. So what does the school care? What does the bank care? They don't care.
right,
They'll
right.
go ahead and give you a loan for, a degree in basket weaving, whether
Yeah,
or not
yeah,
there are sufficient level of jobs, in that field, right? Yeah,
yeah,
it makes no sense the way we do it. And the same thing is true of healthcare, because insurance is not open because we don't have transparency. We don't get to see what they're charging for this, that, and the other
right,
procedure.
right.
They're able to just rack it up and keep driving it up,
Yeah,
and now, very few people can afford healthcare. In fact, Obamacare made it worse for everyone.
yeah, yeah.
So, my final question to you, and then I'm going to open it up for you to uh, share what you want. But my final question to you is: looking ahead, what are your priorities for Hardy County over the next few years, especially in light of the challenge, some of the challenges that we've already talked about? What if you can accomplish, like if you've got a main thing that you hope to accomplish, what would that be?
I think growth. I think growth is the biggest thing. We have to have that. It's the most fundamental thing, and it's good growth. I mean, there's some growth that could be negative and present more challenges that could, but we have to continue to see growth,
We don't want a
positive
growth of
growth.
illegal aliens,
Yeah, yeah,
but
exactly.
a growth of business would be great.
Yes, it does, and that's the key thing. And the reason I say that is because it solves a lot of other issues. Okay, it's what has to happen in our economy. If you don't have that most fundamental thing, you can't, because if you go to services, and so like practically speaking, like what I can work on is allocating money toward things that produce growth, like infrastructure that's good,
Mm,
because that's
yeah.
not wasteful spending, and it incentivizes businesses to come in. And so practically speaking, the way that I do things that lead to that growth is smart infrastructure projects, and those two things hand in hand, working hand in hand, because that represents good planning coming from the infrastructure side, and it also attracts businesses, and that's what we
Hmm.
need. Like that's
Yeah. Well, as
that
long as you're
that's our
not
bread and
building
butter.
bridges to nowhere, right?
Exactly,
Then
exactly.
yeah, infrastructure is always a good good thing to invest in. Um,
Yeah,
the last question that I have for you, and this is really more for you, but um, I always give the final word to my guest, and if there's one thing that you hope that people take away from this conversation, if they remember nothing else, what would that thing be?
I think it's passion and engagement. Like you have to, and what I hope that people see from me, I'm very engaged in this whole process. And what I think is that you never say die, you never lose hope, and you just keep fighting. Sometimes things get tough, and most certainly things don't always go our way. Most certainly that's true. But this that we have in America, it's the greatest thing. Like that we have freedom and we have the opportunity to take part in this whole process. It's a very beautiful thing, but it can't be taken for granted, because it's no guarantee that this continues forever. And so I think the main thing is just to be engaged, to be interested, because that will create a situation where you improve as an individual, but it will also be you giving your small part to the community. And I hope that that's what people take from anything and which has been a great conversation this evening. Like the questions that you have are very relevant. They're right on cue for what a county commissioner deals with. But what I would hope that someone takes from this conversation is that we all need to be, we can all do a bit more to be more engaged in this process. And that is not meaningless. That is not meaningless because it takes that. It takes an engaged citizenry that leads to more freedom for us all. And it's a necessity in a democracy like we have.
Well, Hardy County is blessed to have you as their commissioner, and thank you for coming on the show and giving of your time. You already give a lot of your time, and it's not for like this, great amount of pay either. But I appreciate, like I said, all that you do, and for coming on the show and sharing a little bit about, what county commissioners do and about the challenges and about your county of Hardy County. Steve, thanks a lot. I'm going to end and close this in prayer. I recognize that we have to do our part, but we also, unless the Lord builds a house, then those that labor in vain. And I'm a firm believer that we need God's help in this, to turn our country around, and we need God's help to solve some of these problems that we have even in our state of West Virginia, with the issue of population decline and our young people staying. Yeah. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this opportunity to talk with Steven. Lord, I pray your blessing on him and on the county commission in Hardy County, Lord, and over all of our public officials. I pray, Lord, that you would guide and direct them and lead them in the decisions that they make on our behalf, every day, Lord. And I just pray that you would give wisdom and that you would help moral and good men and women to step up and run for office and to end up in those positions of power and influence. Lord, we pray your blessing over Steve and his family and his business as well. And I thank you, Lord, for the audience that listened tonight, and pray that you would help them to walk away from this conversation feeling the need to get more engaged and, Lord, walking away with more wisdom than they had before they came. Ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Raise some cane. You gotta raise some cane. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, we'll watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some cane, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some cane.